Hi readers! So before we start the show, I have a quick ask. Will you pretty please rate and review the show if you like it? I mean, if you don't like it, well, that's your choice. But if you do like it, rating and reviewing helps other people find the show. So if you take a few seconds and hit those 5 stars, that helps. And if you take a minute to write something nice about the show, that will help even more. So thank you in advance. And alrighty, now on to the episode. Welcome to The Reader's Couch, a podcast that brings you lively conversations with some of your favourite authors and bookish personalities. Over here, the couch is always booked, but I've moved some books to the side table and fluffed some cushions so I can welcome a guest or two to come lounge with us. Today on the couch, we have 2 readers who've decided to come lounge with us and share their top 10 books of 2021. In part 3 of our 6-part Top 10 Books of 2021 series is Amy Gruenwald. She's the bookstagrammer behind the account Read with Amy over on Instagram. And Kelly Lycurgus. She's the bookstagrammer behind Kells is Booked Up on Instagram. So stay tuned to discover and learn more about the books that made their top 10 list. Hi readers! Don't forget to download your free copy of the 2022 Winter Reading Guide. This year's guide has a total of 30 of the best new books organized across 7 categories with 6 classic novels included as well. We also have a category that's dedicated to the minimalist reader, and the Minimalist Reads list has 8 titles that we highly recommend if you're only planning to pick up a few reads this winter. In the guide, you'll also find some fun recipes, things to do at home, and tips to improve your reading life. So download your free guide and see the books that made the list by visiting bibliolifestyle.com. That's your free copy of the 2022 Winter Reading Guide over at bibliolifestyle.com. I've also included a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. A brutally honest memoir to keep on your radar is Sea State by Tabitha Lastly. In her mid-30s and newly free from a terrible relationship, Tabitha Lastly quit her job at a London magazine and decided to make good on an idea for a book about oil rigs and the men who worked on them, because she wanted to see what men were really like when no women were around. For 6 months, Tabitha conducted interviews with 103 oil riggers in Aberdeen, Scotland. But her affair with her first interview subject, a married man named Caden, sent her original plan into a tailspin. Sea State chronicles Lastly's months interviewing offshore oil riggers and her affair with Caden, but she also examines the industry's work and home life culture, class, love, and politics. Sea State by Tabitha Lastly is being published by Eco Books, and copies go on sale on December 7th, 2021. So call your local bookseller and get those pre-orders in, or make a request at your local library. Hi readers, welcome again to The Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is Amy Gruenwald. She's a bookstagrammer behind the account Read with Amy. She's a lifelong bookworm, amateur baker, and also a sports enthusiast fan from the Midwest. So please welcome to the couch, Amy Gruenwald. Hey, Amy.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, I'm excited to have you too. Can't wait to talk books. But first, introduce yourself to listeners.
Sure. Like Victoria said, I'm a lifelong bookworm. Some of my earliest memories are, reading picture books on the couch, going to the library, particularly with my grandpa. He would take me a lot and, ending up figuring out what the checkout limits were at the library when I was a child, and also figuring out that they didn't know what to do with me during the summer reading program when I completed it. So it has been a 30-year love of books and reading. And so I'm really excited to talk about. I will always talk books with anybody whenever they bring them up. I was just at a holiday party this past weekend, and someone made the mistake of mentioning, "Oh, well, do you like to read? What do you like to read?" And I'm like, "Are you ready? Let's go."
Hey, that could be your party trick, by the way.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I don't know if I scare people away or not, but
Love it, love it. Plus, we also have that in common with our granddads taking us to the library,
absolutely.
learning our checkout limits, and then them not knowing what to do with us after the summer reading programs, reading challenges, reading quizzes, whatever it is you have in your hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So, Amy, let's get into your top 10 books of 2021. I know the process must have been difficult, but I'm really excited to get into the books. What's the first one on your list?
So the first one, and this is in no particular order because choosing a favorite is just, I think it's impossible. I know some people say they can do it, but I don't know if they're being honest with us. So the first book is Meet Me in Another Life by Katrina Silvey. And I'm going to give a very, very brief summary, but I'm going to keep it really vague and kind of like high level. So we follow Thora and Santi as they meet each other in multiple lives. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're coworkers. In one timeline, they're a teacher and a student. In another, they're a caregiver and a dying patient. And you do find out over the course of the book how they know each other and what this all means. And when I say that this was absolutely devastating, I mean, I read this, I think, in 2 sittings, and I didn't know what to expect. I received it. This was a publisher copy, and I was like, oh, we'll finally give this a try. I had featured it on my account a few months prior, and it just spoke to me. It has a beautiful cover, and I finished it, and I am not a crier, but it got me. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
You're right. It's an eye-catching cover. It's a very interesting premise. I'm always fascinated by the alternate lives, multiple lives, different kind of vibe. While very different, it kind of reminded me a bit of the Midnight Library in terms of just, different lives. So for me, it's that sort of thing. But yes, it definitely tugs at the heartstrings.
Oh, yeah. And it's a debut.
I know. Yeah, that's a very important fact. Yes, very amazing job for sure. What's book 2 on the list?
So book 2 is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. This follows 3 women who are code breakers at Bletchley Park in England during World War II. And the thing I like about Kate Quinn in particular is she is the absolute queen of historical fiction, truly. And what I like about her novels is that she teaches you something, because there are a lot of historical fiction out there, and it's, what you're into, no judgment if this is the type of historical fiction you like. But a lot of times I've found that it's just a story that happens to be set in a specific time period without that time period having any sort of impact. They might mention the war or whatever is going on in that particular time period, but this story and her novels really interweave real life. And I think with this one in particular, I did not know anything about Bletchley Park. And maybe that's a symptom of being an American. I don't know if that's something that, people in England learn about. But when I read, I was like, are you serious? And then there's something mentioned at the end that ties into actual real life that I Googled immediately upon finishing the book. And one of the other things about Kate Quinn is this is a 600-page book.
Yeah.
And you'd never know it. I mean, again, it was another, I think you'll see a theme in my list here, but this was another book that I read, I think maybe in 2 or 3 sittings, because you just can't stop. And she really pulls at the heart of the friendships between the women. And there are some romantic storylines in it, but that takes a back seat to the historical impact and the strength and courage and thoughts and feelings of the women at the heart of the story.
Kate Quinn is an auto buy, auto read. So if I'm not gifted the book, I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to read the book. She really is the queen. I agree with historical fiction. She always does a great job.
Oh, she's amazing.
She is. Book 3.
All right. We're doing a little bit. I don't know if this is like cheat code level here, but this book doesn't come out until 2022. It's A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. And I'm going to read you what I wrote in my review as the summary because I laugh at it. So I am the type of person to laugh at my own jokes. Harper is a dental student working towards a residency in oral surgery. She's smart. She's driven. She's awkward sometimes. she's dealing with some trauma and grief from her childhood, and she tends to keep everyone at arm's length. Dan is a first-year dental student reluctantly trying to live up to a legacy left behind by his complicated and not-so-nice father. And after a meet cute that's more like a meet funny or a meet oh my god, Harper and Dan become fast friends, and although their story is something of a slow burn, they develop feelings for each other very quickly, but it never feels insta-lovey or forced. And I have to say, this book, as a relatively new romance reader who's only really gotten into the genre this year, how dare Maisie write this as her debut? It's one of those books that if I didn't know her and I did not know it was her debut, I would have immediately looked to see if she had an extensive backlist, because that's what it reads like. If you're listening and you are a reluctant romance reader, I can highly recommend this book. And I always tell people pre-order it. It comes out in March because you might forget about it. And then it's like a surprise present to yourself when you get it in the mail.
Yes, that is a great sell for team pre-order. That happens to me a lot too. And my guilty, I guess, not even guilty pleasure, I won't say that. What happens to me more often than not is I have these late night rampages. I'm on my phone. I'm going through my notes, seeing the books I flagged and say, okay, I want to buy this. I want to add that. And I'll just order these things. I forget. I go to bed. Okay, because it's late night. Go to bed. Forget about it. Minding my business. And weeks later or months later, something shows up. I'm like, wait. Yeah. So yes, I advocate for that. That's a great way to treat yourself, your future self. Treat your future self. And I looked that one up. Yes, it's March 22. So yeah.
And she has more books coming. So it's the start of a series. And so if you like some of the other characters in that book, rest assured that they will appear in future stories.
Okay. Awesome. All right. What's the next book on the list? Book 4.
So book 4 is The Duke Heist by Erica Ridley. And if you're like me, you got sucked into Bridgerton mania at the beginning of the year. Absolutely loved it. And that I was already warming up to historical romance, but Bridgerton really pushed me into I need to find more books to read. And I was lucky enough to receive a copy of The Duke Heist. And it scratches that Bridgerton itch in so many ways. So one of the things that I enjoyed about Bridgerton and that series is the family. The Bridgerton family, they're funny. They have, each book in this series, if you don't know, is about a different sibling, and they all have very distinct personalities, and they're just a lot of fun. So in The Duke Heist, we're introduced to the Wild Winchesters, which is basically like this ragtag group of former orphans who were taken in by a kind, wealthy man, kind of like a group Annie situation almost. And each sibling has a particular skill or ability. So they're almost like their own little group of espionage agents, if you will. And so in the first book, we focus primarily on Chloe, her particular skill is she's forgettable. Nobody ever remembers meeting her. She can show up at an event and no one will recognize her. And this makes it really good. It makes her really good at blending seamlessly into society and being able to steal things. No, she doesn't steal things from, this isn't some nefarious theft or anything. So in this particular book, she's trying to steal back a painting that was wrongfully taken from her family. And when she's working on stealing this painting, she accidentally abducts the Duke of Faircliff, which I'm sure you can imagine that this turns into a romantic relationship, as is reliable in our romance reads. And it's funny and it's very sweet. And it helped me learn personally that when I read romance, I like comedy. There has to be a comedy aspect involved, because if it's too serious, it's just oh, geez, here we go.
Awesome. Book 5.
Okay, we have another historical romance. This is The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shupe. This follows Alice Lusk, who is a very shy heiress, and she's sick of being overlooked by every eligible bachelor that she comes across. And so she decides to take matters into her own hands and approaches Kit Ward, who's a notorious rake, to teach her how to flirt. And it kind of goes exactly how you think it would. And, the cover really harkens back to those, what they term bodice rippers. And at first I was like, oh, this cover is like a little spicy, but this is the cutest book. I mean, there's definitely steam involved in this, if that's your particular interest in a romance read, but it has such a good balance of a really good story, really funny moments, really sweet romantic moments, and a healthy dose of steam. And so I would highly recommend this to anyone who's looking to dip their toe into historical romance. I think this is a very well-rounded book to start with.
Awesome. We're gone past the halfway point now. Book 6.
So you did mention in your intro that I am an avid sports fan, and this hits that perfectly. This is also the longest title on the list. Incredible Women of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League by Anika Orrock. And this is actually an illustrated history of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League and the stories of the first women to play baseball. And if you're familiar with A League of Their Own, the film, this is basically the real life A League of Their Own. And what's really interesting about this is most people know that these women played baseball during World War II when, men were away at war. Major League Baseball wasn't happening because the guys, the men couldn't play, but their league actually extended well into the 1950s, and they played for a long time, much longer than I realized, and also learned that until the movie A League of Their Own came out, the majority of the country didn't even know this league had ever existed, which is, but it was primarily concentrated in the Midwest as well. So you had a lot of other regions that just never knew. But it's beautifully illustrated. It's really great for baseball fans. It's really great for feminists. It's a very feminist read. History lovers in general, sports lovers in general. You don't need to be a fan of baseball to appreciate this book. There's player statistics, there's quotes from the players, interviews with the players, and it's laid out in such a way. There are a few pages that are relatively heavy on copy for what is kind of like a coffee table book, an illustrated coffee table book. But the way that Anika sections it out, it reads very easily. And yet again, it's basically a one-sitting read.
Okay, awesome. So what's book 7 on your list?
So book 7 is, again, kind of like doing the cheat code thing here. It's technically a whole series, but I stuck with the last book in the series. So book 7 is Beyond Reach by Karin Slaughter. And this is the last book in her Grant County series, which follows Sarah Linton, who's a pediatrician and medical examiner, and her ex-husband, who is the police chief. His name is Jeffrey Tolliver. And this series, Karin Slaughter is already a favorite. Again, an auto by author, easily. And she's also super cool. I always tell people when I'm introducing them to Karin Slaughter, I'm like, not only are her books great, but like I also wish that she were my big sister because she's so cool. These books stand on their own, but I would highly recommend reading them in order because there are some elements that do build on each other as the series goes on. This makes for an incredibly emotional ending to the series. And as just like a little hint, Sarah Linton does show up in her second series, the Will Trent series, which kind of carries things on a little bit. And I'm midway through that right now, but I cannot recommend Karin Slaughter enough. Every book of hers I've read has been either 4 or 5 stars.
Amazing. Book 8.
So book 8 is Dear Justice by Nick Stone. And this follows, so this is the second book. I think there's only going to be the 2. It's a duology. This is the second book after Dear Martin. And Quan, who we met in Dear Martin, is an incarcerated teenager, and he's on trial for the shooting death of a police officer. And the thing about Quan is that, you could make a snap judgment about him, right? Because you hear shot a police officer and he's a teenager and he's from a rough era and you make your assumptions, and Quan is smart and he's caring. He is misguided, but he faced a lot of tough issues as a child and eventually, found a friend group who gave him that love and that care that he was searching for, but not without some major consequences, obviously. And the book really examines what leads Quan and then, real life kids like him into making not so great choices. And if you're not familiar with the school to prison pipeline, this is a really great place to start. And I think a lot of people, want to read books about social justice and especially race issues, especially in the United States. And some of the nonfiction books can be a little intimidating. They're long and I don't want to say boring, but they read very academically. And this is a really good starting point if it's something you're not familiar with, or if you have a family member that you think could learn more about these issues. I would highly recommend gifting them both Dear Martin and Dear Justice. These are YA novels too, so they do read much, much easier than a lot of the nonfiction that's out there. And so I cannot recommend these enough.
Amazing. Book 9.
Book 9, The Haunting of Leigh Harker by Darcy Coates. So this is about a woman who lives in a very quiet home in the suburbs, and all of a sudden things change. Curtains are opening by themselves, the radio's turning on and off, and there's a dark figure looming in the shadows of her bedroom at night and watching her. And it's, it says push to her limits, but unwilling to abandon her home. And I think about that. And I think about how much, so many of us have spent an astronomical amount of time at home in the past 2 years. And you think about your home kind of coming back to attack you, or so it seems. And this was a surprisingly emotional read. And it's for readers if you like spooky vibes, but you don't necessarily want to be scared. You want to be able to turn the lights off to go to sleep and, your eyes don't pop open and you're laying there thinking like, is that a shadow in the corner? What is that? Is that a person? I don't know what's happening. Is my house haunted? This is a great choice. This is definitely horror light. And Darcy Coates also has a pretty extensive backlist that I can't wait to dive into. But again, this is one of those books that I would go in knowing very little, read the synopsis, and then just jump right in from there. Because I think there will be some things, there's some twists in there that if you've read similar books, you might pick up on. But I think there are some other twists that, I was definitely surprised. And again, very, very surprised at how emotional this book really was, especially for horror.
Right. Absolutely. And now the last book on your list, top 10 2021 books that you read. What do you got?
I'm cheating again because it's a whole series. It's the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante, and most people will recognize My Brilliant Friend. That's the first novel in the series. And this isn't exactly a cheat because I think that these 4 are really just one very long book split into 4 chunks. So these novels follow Elena and Leela, who are 2 best friends that meet as children, and then they have a very tumultuous relationship that unfolds over the span of the 4 books, which the 4 books cover multiple decades of their lives. And when I picked the first one up from the library, partially because I don't know if you've seen the box set of the quartet, but like they're these pretty pastels and they're very simple looking. And I would see them on people's shelves and think like, that's a really pretty series that I think I want to read because selfishly, I kind of think they would look nice on my shelves. So I picked the first one up from the library and I thought, I'm either going to love this or I'm going to hate it. There's no in between. And I was surprisingly, pleasantly surprised at how much I loved them. They're very feminist and they're very raw, and they can also be really frustrating. They present the women, especially our 2 main characters, Lena and Leela, as complete and complex beings, which sounds like a no-brainer, but isn't exactly common for women in literature. And especially to read really good literary fiction by a woman, because I feel that so much literary fiction that floats around out there, they're by male authors. So Leela and Elena, they're not always likable, but they feel very real. And the 3rd book in the series was my favorite, but they're all great. And I think that if you've started the series and you enjoyed the first one, but didn't love the story following them as younger children, I would stick with it because it just gets better and better as they grow up together. And it's also set in Italy, and the setting is just incredibly vivid. I'm not one of those people that pictures too much when I read. I see some blurry faces and maybe a vague setting, but I could picture Naples almost perfectly. And again, these are books that maybe I'm just late to the party here. The first book came out about 10 years ago, but if they're on your TBR, you have to pick them up. They're incredible.
You know what? My favorite thing about books is the fact they don't expire. So if you don't get to it this year, next year, even 10 years later, you know,
Absolutely.
it's still so good. It's still so relevant. You still get that whole new experience. So I also think that's why I'm a huge fan of books. They don't go bad.
Exactly.
And yeah, they'll stay with you for a while, especially when they're that good. But Amy, thank you so much for coming and sharing your top 10. You cheated some.
I'm sorry. I know there ended up being like 20 books on this list with the series.
Well, I think that's something us bookworms have in common. Reading too many books, recommending a bunch. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Ooh, someone's at the door. Here to join us on the couch and share her top 10 books of 2021 is Kelly Lycurgus. She's an avid reader and book collector who loves to travel. And she's the bookstagrammer behind Kels's Booked Up on Instagram and Twitter. And you can also find her at Diverse Reading, also on Instagram. Please welcome to the couch, Kelly Lycurgus. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Victoria. How are you today?
I am doing good. I'm so excited to have you here. Yay.
This is awesome. I'm totally stoked.
I can't wait to get into the books that we're going to talk about today, your top 10 for 2021. But before we get going, I want readers and listeners to get to know you. Tell us about yourself, who you are, where they can find you, and just whatever it is you have going on.
I am on Instagram at Kels is Booked Up. I'm on Twitter as the same. I'm also on Instagram as Diverse Reading and on Twitter as the same. And I have a Clubhouse club called Diverse Reading. We have about 5,000 members now that we do a couple of weekly meetings there. I do interviews on Facebook under Black Girls Read Books Too. And I'm basically just floating around the internet.
Amazing, amazing. So basically you can find her anywhere on these internet streets. So that's pretty cool. Okay, Kelly, so let's get into your top 10 books. What's the first book on your list?
Not in any particular order, but I love Kindred by Octavia Butler. And that's a biggie for me because I'm not really into science fiction like that. And I hadn't heard of her until a few years ago. I was in an independent bookstore in New York City called The Strand. And it just happened to be on one of the front tables. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And now I am a huge Octavia Butler fan.
Amazing. So tell us about book 2 on your list.
Let's see. Let's go with Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. That book blew my mind. And it's a hell of a book. It's a thriller kind of and mystery. And it deals with a girl who has some issues. I think if I remember correctly, she's like in a juvenile detention center or like a group home type thing. And there's an accusation of a death of a baby. And they're going back and forth trying to figure out what happened with this baby. And the author put you through all the emotions, made you want to throw the book. I recommend that book to anybody that will listen to me.
Sounds like that's the book you're putting in everyone's hands. You're like, here, read this one.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. What's book 3 on the list?
Let's see. I love A Kiss Before Dying by Ira Levin. In my head, because I'm not really sure, but in my head, I kind of feel like it's like the beginning of like the psychological thriller type genre type thing, or in the beginnings of that, because it deals with a kind of like a love, like a stalkery. Think of like You, but like 50, 60 years ago.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. And it's so good. So I love that book.
That one is new to me. I've never heard about that one.
They made a movie on it too. I've never seen the movie. I think the movie was probably made in like the 80s. But yeah, the book was written maybe in the 50s or the 60s.
Okay. Awesome. Book 4. What's book 4 on the list?
The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's historical fiction. It deals with an actress that was in old Hollywood, and there's a hell of a twist at the end. And it's amazing. I've read the book several times. I had the pleasure of interviewing the author, so I got to ask the questions I wanted to ask. And that's another book I will, oh, it's behind me.
I was just going to say, I'm staring straight at it, you guys. I know you can't see Kelly because it's a podcast, but I'm staring at that book face out on her bookshelf. You would think she is the author. I'm teasing.
It's amazing. I love that book. I got my husband into that book, and then he ended up passing that book around to everybody in his office. So that book is so good.
Wow. See, I notice the reactions on social media are just so very strong for that title. It's either they really, really like it or they don't. There's no in between. It's either you love it or you hate it. But either way, you're going to feel some strong type of way about it. So yay. Oh, amazing. Okay, book 5. We're halfway there.
Verity, Colleen Hoover. So Colleen Hoover is known for a lot of her romances, which aren't like super duper extra romancy. They still kind of real life. But Verity, she mixed psychological thriller with the romance. And it literally starts with a pop. There's a heck of a twist in the end. There's twists throughout it. And Verity will like scramble your mind. So Verity's very good.
Verity by Colleen Hoover. We're getting in the other half. What's book 6 on your list?
Let's go with The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. So that's a young adult novel. It's her Nicola Yoon's second novel. I love both of them, but I picked one of the two, and I absolutely adored the story. It dealt with a young girl and her family. They were immigrants and they're trying to stay in the country. She happens to find love on the day that she's going to the immigration office. And it goes by basically in that day mostly. And it's so cute and it's relatable. And I just love that story.
I actually read that one and I loved it. I was so compelled to keep turning the pages. I wanted to see what was going to happen to her. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one for sure. Okay, book 7.
I'm going to cheat. So the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy.
We're going with a whole trilogy, you guys. Whole trilogy.
I am not huge into fantasy, but I absolutely loved that storyline and it had me hooked. I read the whole thing. I have probably 4 or 5 different editions of it, including a Lumicrate. And it's really, really good. It's YA. It has a spicy language. The banter is really good. It deals with monsters and angels but it's just fun. It's a really fun read, and then you have the drama and death, and it's just cool. I love that book, the series. So I love it.
Awesome. Kelly cheated, you guys. It's a whole series, but it's okay. We'll let it slide. What's book 8?
It's another cheat.
Oh my God.
The Pushing the Limits series by Katie L. McGarry. It's a YA series. So you have like the teenage love, teenage angst, and it kind of sucks you in. I think of it as like a YA soap opera.
I don't know that one, but sounds interesting.
I think that one came out maybe 8-9 years ago.
Gotcha.
I think it was her first series. I think so.
Right. Okay. Book 9.
Going with the classic, quote unquote, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. I'm a sucker for Darcy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the Darcy love online is real. The Austenites is a whole cult in a good way though. But yeah, it's wild how much folks love the book, still reread the book, they congregate around the book. So yeah, it's quite interesting that you picked Pride and Prejudice. When was the last time you read that one?
Last week. I reread it often.
I'm dying. I was expecting you to say, I read it earlier this year. Last week.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, that one speaks for itself. We can just move right on to book 10. What was book 10 on your list?
I'll close it out with Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It's like the ultimate treating the kid bad, and then she has to grow up and find her way in life. She's getting messed over by her employer, by her family, the orphanage. It's just like, oh my God, Jane, like, oh, I want to cry. I want to cry. Like, why does these things keep happening to you? Like, Jane Eyre it'll rip your heart apart. And then you'll be like, you can do this, Jane, you can do this.
So here's another thing I find super divisive when folks debate between Bronte and Austen. So I'm going to throw you in the ring now.
Uh-oh.
Who would you fight for, Austen or Bronte? Because I'm telling you, that debate seems very alive and real. And the comparisons are always between Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen. I don't know why, but that's what I'm seeing.
I have to?
Yes.
Bronte. I would go with Jane Eyre.
Interesting. Why?
I think Jane Eyre is, although there is a love story behind it, it has more of a reality based to it. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, I don't want to say stereotypes, but there's a lot of abuse towards children. There's sexism. There's a whole bunch of different things that are talked about in Jane Eyre. And Jane Eyre is about 80 or 100 years older than Pride and Prejudice, if I'm getting my years right. So she was doing this even before Austen was a thought. So Jane Eyre, that's always in my tops. That's been in my tops for probably like over 20 years. There's something about that book. I think men and women can both love that book. It's not so lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy. It's heartbreaking.
No, it is. It's dark. See, and I used to always say to folks, I love Bronte, and they're like, oh my God, it's so dark and, sometimes depressing. But I like dark in literature because folks are tired of hearing me saying it. But I'm a Rebecca girl. I love me some Rebecca. That's the book I'll reread because I love dark and gothic kind of books. So when you said Bronte right after Austen, I had to take the bait. I went for it.
I love that. I liked Rebecca, but it still tears me up because I'm like, what really happened? Like, it's like, you're kind of on that cliffhanger. It's like, yeah, she did that.
She did that, and that's what I personally love. Okay, so Kelly, before I let you go, the one thing I really want to ask you, and I'm sure some listeners might have this thought, is most of the books on your top 10 list for 2021 aren't books released in 2021. Does this indicate the kind of reader you are, where you live in the backlist, so to say, with a dash of the classics?
I used to be that kind of reader. Now that I'm on social media more, I'm into a little bit of everything. So like the books behind me, like Black Nerd Problems came out this year. I love that book. That was absolutely fantastic. And you get to geek out with that book. But when I've thought about it, I was thinking about the books that I've been recommending for years. So I wanted to go with, what this has been tried and true through the years. So that's what I wanted to go with.
Well, I love books
this year.
Well, you know what? I'm happy you did. You are giving our listeners some variety here. They can probably, find this book on their shelves. And if they're not on their shelves, the hold at the library won't be too long. So, I appreciate you, Kelly, and these books. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your top 10.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Readers, I had so much fun speaking with Amy and Kelly, and I want to thank them again for coming and lounging on the couch with us and sharing their top 10 books of 2021. Continuing in our top 10 books of 2021 series, 2 more readers will be lounging on the couch with us and sharing the books that made their top 10 list. So be sure to tune in. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Reader's Couch. You can find out more about the show and submit your questions for our guest by visiting our website, thereaderscouch.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Couch is Booked. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Next week, I'll be back with new guests, more books, and some fun games we can play. But until then, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.